Sir Bernard Jenkins.
Well, Prime Minister, good afternoon. The question is whether the civil service is still preparing for leaving without a deal, and you've confirmed that that's still the default legal position. But what exactly is the policy of the government? Because as a matter of fact, an international law, the moment at which the 29th of March deadline for the Article 50 period was extended was when you accepted the extension offered to you at that European Council on the 21st of March. That's correct, isn't it?
Sorry, the first extension was obviously...
First extension.
Yes.
It was you were at the Council, you accepted the extension. That is when Article 50 was extended.
Yes.
Yes. And and it was not when Parliament subsequently passed the SI changing the exit date. That was just an implementation.
The change of the SI exit date was necessary to ensure that UK domestic law was in line with the international law. In the government's response to my committee's inquiry into the status of resolutions of the House of Commons, the government said that even for motions of return, humble addresses, such motions would, and I quote, this is the government's response, lack statutory force, and a mere motion cannot be, quote, be used to change the law, compel the government to legislate or lay a regulation or tell ministers how to perform a statutory function. So whatever the political pressures may have been on you on the 29th of March, you were under no legally binding obligation of any kind to accept the extension, were you? Well, the government took a decision that it was right to and appropriate at that time to accept that extension. That was, as you know, a limited extension, and that was done with the expectation or the intent of trying to ensure that in that further space of time we were able to ensure that we could leave with a deal. Because as I indicated earlier, it remains the government's position that the best option for the United Kingdom in our national interest is to leave with a deal.
And at the subsequent summit, you made the same choice without any legal obligation upon you to do so.
No, there was a legal obligation. There was an obligation at the second summit because the House of Commons had passed legislation that required government to ask for an extension.
It required the government to seek an extension, but it didn't require you to accept any terms that were offered. And that's what you did.
I accept that there was a significant discussion among the EU Council. I did accept the terms that were offered. There were a crucial element that we insisted on, or made clear that we wanted to see in that, was the terminability of any period of time, should it go beyond the period of extension that we had asked for. But I think that the fact that the House of Commons had actually not just, your first question referenced a motion of the House of Commons. This wasn't just a motion of the House of Commons, it was an Act of Parliament that was passed, requiring the government to seek an extension and setting certain parameters for that extension.
But you were obliged to seek an extension, but actually you weren't obliged to accept an extension.
Well, I think if one's obliged to seek an extension, the expectation is that one is going to accept an extension. No. There's no point asking for an extension and then saying... No. So, I mean, but let me explain that, because the implication of your question is this. We said we were going to ask for an extension to the 30th of June. The House had confirmed that. If I'd asked for an extension to the 30th of June and the European Council had come back with an extension to the 30th of June, the implication of your question is I should have said, no, sorry, I know we asked for that, but we don't want it any longer. I don't think that's quite how one behaves in international...
I think you'll find, Prime Minister, if you take advice from the Attorney General, you weren't actually under an obligation to accept any extension. You were under an obligation to seek to be offered an extension, not to accept it. But the point is this, that under what conditions would you be prepared to set aside the pressures you're under in order to deliver the referendum result and exercise your legal right to refuse an offer of a further extension under Article 50, and if necessary to leave without a deal?
Well, I want us to leave the European Union. I have been working for us to leave the European Union. I have voted consistently in Parliament for us to leave the European Union. Had everybody in Parliament voted in the same way, we would no longer be a member of the European Union.
This means, I take that to mean that you're not going to contemplate leaving the European Union of your own choice without a withdrawal agreement.
I'm making a very simple point, which is that And I'm
It
asking
is,
you.
yes, I know, I'm answering the question in the way in which I choose to answer it. The point is very simple. I stand by the references I've made in the past that no deal is better than a bad deal. But I actually happen to think that we have a good deal. When I first made that reference, I was talking in the abstract. It was in Lancaster House. We now are no longer talking in the abstract. We're talking against the background of a negotiated deal, hard fought, which I believe is a good deal for the United Kingdom. That's why I say, and it remains the government's position that we will continue to work to leave with a deal.
So if the House of Commons declines to approve the withdrawal agreement and declines to approve leaving without a deal, your choice will be remain in the European Union indefinitely.
No, my choice, I do not believe we should be remaining in the European Union indefinitely. I believe that is why I want to see the House of Commons agreeing.
Contemplate choosing to leave without a deal. We'll stay in, won't we?
We will only stay in if Article 50 is revoked. I have been clear that I believe that it is the best option for the United Kingdom is to leave with a deal. That's what we are continuing to work for.
Okay, well, one final question. Why haven't you helped the House of Commons already by publishing the withdrawal agreement bill?
We will publish the withdrawal agreement bill when we have completed the work that we're doing on the withdrawal agreement bill.
The withdrawal agreement itself is not going to change. What's going to change in the bill? The withdrawal agreement's been the same since you agreed it at the end of last year.
Well, we've already seen a number of things that have changed that need to be reflected in the withdrawal agreement bill from the withdrawal agreement that was signed in November. There are the issues that have been agreed, further issues, legally binding issues that have been agreed with the European Union, and there are commitments that the government has given, for example, out of the amendment from Gareth Snell and Lisa Nandy. There are also commitments that we've given in, I've given and others have given in the House of Commons in relation to workers' rights. So it is not the case that the withdrawal agreement bill that will be presented to Parliament today will be the same. There's been changes, including in our negotiations with the European Union.
It's not unusual for the government to publish draft bills and then produce introduce a bill that's different or amended, or indeed to introduce amendments during the passage of the bill. Wouldn't it help the House of Commons a very great deal for you to publish the withdrawal agreement bill now?
I think it would be helpful for the House of Commons for us to publish the withdrawal agreement bill when we do so, having considered all the issues that have changed since the withdrawal agreement in November of last year, and when we are able to enable the House to have proper consideration of that bill.
Continuing the theme of legislative provisions, coming on to Sir William Cash.
Thank you, Chairman. You just said, I want to leave the EU, Prime Minister. Well, why don't you get on with it and bring in the commencement order for a start? I mean, that wouldn't be a bad way to begin. But why do you claim that you carried out the referendum vote in leaving the EU and our manifesto when the withdrawal agreement legally requires United Kingdom citizens, businesses and workers to obey laws made by majority vote of the other 27 member states, going on for years without our involvement, gives the UK courts the right to override United Kingdom Acts of Parliament, undermines the constitutional status of Northern Ireland, and thereby undermines our national interest? Why do you repeatedly and again today say that what you're doing in the withdrawal agreement is in our national interest? It most obviously is not.
Well, you said at the beginning of your question that I'd said, as I just have, that I want us to leave the European Union, and you thought I should get on with it. I've been trying to get on with it. I voted 3 times now for the withdrawal agreement that will enable us to ratify that such that we can leave the European Union. Well, this is, and I repeat that had the first meaningful vote gone through, then we could have got the legislation through and be out already. But I do not accept the description that you have given of the position that the United Kingdom will be in, on the basis of the withdrawal agreement and the proposed future relationship that we'll negotiate in phase 2 with the European Union. I could go through the specific issues if you like, but it is not the case. It is very clear that it is not the case that we are going to see the continued remit of the European Court of Justice here in the United Kingdom.
Well, Prime Minister, when I called on you to resign the other day in the House, you said that the withdrawal agreement was a good deal for the United Kingdom. But how can it be so when it deliberately undermines the repeal of the European Communities Act 1972? And I've mentioned already there's no commencement order. This shackles us to all EU... Just a minute, if I may, please. This shackles us to all EU treaties and laws. Your 108 promises not to extend the time have been overridden by what many regard as an unlawful statutory instrument, which is now before the Joint Committee on Statutory Instruments. You gave instructions to Conservative MPs to defeat my amendment in the Cooper-Letwin bill, which would have stopped our taking part in the European elections. So we passed the European Union Withdrawal Act, and you know perfectly well, and we agree about this, if nothing else, that I put an enormous amount of time and effort, as we all did, in getting that Withdrawal Act through on the 26th of June 2018. So that would have taken us out of the EU, not this withdrawal agreement. And furthermore, why have you gone back on the repeal of the 1972 Act?
I would hope that we would also now agree on both wanting to leave the European Union and wanting to ensure that we can bring that...
In the proper way.
Well, and wanting to ensure that we can bring that about. We've had the exchange about the 1972 Act on the floor of the House. It is, of course, the European withdrawal, the Act that has already been passed does repeal the European, that 1972 Act, and does that at the point of it. But what we have negotiated within the withdrawal agreement is that implementation period, or transition period as it's referred to in the documentation, for a period of time up to the end of December 2020. And during that period of time, yes, we will be continuing to operate very much as we do today. We wouldn't be a member, but we would be continuing to operate as we do today, and it would be necessary to reintroduce certain elements.
We won't be there, Prime Minister. We will have laws passed upon us by 27 other member states without our involvement, taken behind closed doors without even a transcript. That is not anything less than castrating the United Kingdom Parliament.
And that is, first of all, it is, if you look at the timetables that are taking place in relation to directives from the European Union, actually, I think with your experience in the European Scrutiny Committee, I'm sure you know that it isn't the case that you suddenly get a lot of laws passed by the European Union within the period of what would effectively be 12 months.
Accelerated procedures, trilogues.
But secondly, what we're talking about is the implementation period. We are not talking about the future relationship with the European Union. We're talking about a transition period that enables people to be able to have a smooth and orderly exit at the point at which we leave, that gives businesses an absolute certainty about the basis on which they will be operating at that point in time, and gives them the time to prepare for the future relationship that would obviously be negotiated during that period of time.
Don't agree.
Going to move on now.
We know.
Who knew? Right, who else? Sir Patrick.